So where do things go for the Liberals from here? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. Former BC Premier Christy Clark is here. She's a senior advisor with Bennett Jones. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is with us. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. And former Manitoba Premier and Canadian Ambassador to the U.S., Gary Dewar, is with us. He's now a Senior Business Advisor at Dentons. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Happy Thursday. I don't think anyone on this panel is going to be surprised that I have to start with Christy, who gave me a bit of a heart attack a few days ago at the prospect of losing a front bench panelist. I'm going to start straight up and direct with you, Christy. What's going on? Are you potentially throwing your hat in the ring if Mr. Trudeau were to step aside?
Well, I can tell you, Vassy, that I got a lot of emails from a lot of people saying, hey, we love you with Vassy on CTV, don't go. Just like from across the country. It's really been quite amazing. What I said, here's my view on it. The Prime Minister has decided he wants to stay. He's going to stay. He's going to run in the next election. And I have never said from the minute I left politics that I was going to close the door on politics forever. But there's no job open. And I've been there, Vassy, and in a caucus where we had a lot of vigorous discussions. And I can tell you the caucus that I led was a coalition of people from all different parts of the province and hugely different views. This is sometimes what happens inside the room. It's, and so I think the problem we have, and Mark Miller put this quite well, I think, with you a few minutes ago, which is all of the machinations that are, that have seized the media's attention in the room have really drawn attention away from the things that Canadians are thinking about, which is, can my kid ever afford to own a home? Can I get a bigger pay? How do I get a bigger paycheck? What do we do about jobs? What about the standard of living? Those are the things that we need to be focused on, that I need to be focused on, and all Liberals, I think, need to be focused on. Because if we don't, Pierre Poilievre will become the Prime Minister, a man who has never run anything in his life and whose policy book appears to consist of 3 slogans he repeats nonstop. And I think that kind of easy sleight of hand, that division and divisiveness is terrible for our country. So I would say to Liberals, let's get focused and let's get to work.
I'm going to let Lisa respond in a second. I'm just going to ask you one follow-up. Do you think, Christy, that Justin Trudeau should stay as leader, or do you think he should go?
I think he has the right to stay. His caucus has so far, and we saw this today, maintained confidence in him. The party maintains confidence in him. And he's the leader of the party. He says he's going to run. And Liberals across the country need to support him in doing that. Otherwise, keep your eyes on the prize, folks. We can end up with a Pierre Poilievre government. And he would take, in 4 years, he could do a lot to change this country in ways that we could never get back.
So Lisa, I'll bring that point to you, because in my conversations with people who were in caucus yesterday, the only thing that they could convey to me that they agreed on was that they were united in wanting to defeat Pierre Poilievre. But they could not agree on being united behind the Prime Minister. Where, in your mind, does this go from here? And is that unification over trying to beat your competitor enough to keep Trudeau in the leader seat?
So to answer your second part of the question first, no, it's not enough, quite frankly. I think Christy has laid out very clearly what it is that we're talking about in terms of the turning point we have in Canada with respect to our kids, what they can afford, where we're going. I agree with that fundamentally, but I do believe that the Liberal Party is completely distracted. It's thinking internally, it's not thinking externally at all. And if they do want to have a chance at fixing the mess that I would editorially say they made, then they should seek a fresh mandate and they should go to the polls. And if they want to go to the polls with this Prime Minister, then go to the polls with this Prime Minister. But I would also send a caution to those who are running as incumbents. 57% of the people in your riding are saying they don't want the Prime Minister to lead you into the next election. And that's got to be rattling around in the back of your mind. And I just want to assure you as well, Vassy, since we're all going to do it, and I guess Gary will do it, I too will not be leaving the front bench to seek the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. So I just want you to know that it's all good. I'll be back on my Tuesday with Tom O'Carroll.
I'm very relieved to hear that in both your cases. And Gary, I hope the same can be said of you. I guess I have 3 people here who have spent a long time in politics. And Gary, I wonder, particularly as someone who has had to oversee a caucus, who has had to worry about caucus management and re-election and all those things, When you look at the situation as it exists, do you think it is tenable in the long term for the Prime Minister?
Well, I think I predicted last week that he believed strongly that he was the one person who could beat Pierre. And I think so I'm not surprised at his decision today. But my God, it's taken a long time since the St. Paul by-election where they were trounced in Toronto. And then, of course, you've got the situation. I don't think it's just the Liberals just have to worry about Pierre. I think they also have to worry about Mr. Blanchette, who is, according to my sources in Quebec, and Thomas Mulcair will know that better than I would, but he is very popular and he's riding a real popularity wave in Quebec, which represents another huge risk to Liberal incumbents and to the Liberal government. But I thought when he said the 28th, he would actually wait over the weekend, but I'm not surprised he didn't because you don't want to spend 3 or 4 more news cycles just, being consumed by nothing else except, who's with him, who's against him, when he should leave, when he should not. But I think from what they said they would do after the St. Paul by-election in June, which is 4 months ago, it seems like it's sort of a brand of the government right now. It's really slow. It's really not very nimble. It doesn't have a lot of agility. And, when the country really wants more can-do decision-making, it kind of reinforces a brand they're developing on dithering first and acting second, which I think is weak and unfortunate.
Christy, I want to ask you about that because I thought one of the more, candid conversations that I've had on air with caucus members was last night with Ken Hardy, who was pretty, blunt about the caucus's desire to see a proposition put before them and Canadians about why, in a change election, voters should stick with the Liberals. Like, what more beyond what we've already done are we going to do to improve your lives? His assessment was that they had not yet done that in any capacity for either caucus or Canadians. Do you think they need to? And how urgently? And how much change does it in itself need to signify?
Well, I think that they all need to. I think all 3 parties are in some way not speaking to Canadians. I mean, you've got Poilievre who just has these 3 slogans, and it's just there's no plan, there's no big idea, there's no evidence that he could ever get any of that sort of thing done. It's just divide, divide, divide. And then for sure the Liberals have got to get focused on talking to people where they are about what's going on in their lives right now. So that is thinking about the cost of living, thinking about lower taxes for people across the country, improving the investment climate, growing the economy. I mean, those are the things people want us to be talking about. They want us as Liberals to be out there fighting for them and not in the back rooms talking about all the machinations. And, frankly, all the parties have been obsessed, I would argue, with the machinations, with what we've seen the House of Commons practically shut down and all of these motions after motions that aren't really about anything except for kind of fighting for power. And I just think people should be talking about Canadians and our economy and our kids' futures. That's where Canadians want us to be. The Liberal Party needs to be there, and so do the other 3 parties in the House of Commons.
Just a quick follow-up, but with the Liberals specifically, I mean, I take your point on the other parties, but at this point, when you're 20 points ahead and have been for a number of months, the pressure is a little different. Do the Liberals need to say what they're going to do, and do they need to do it soon, I guess is my question.
Yes, I think that the Liberals need to be less distracted by internal machinations and a lot more focused on what we are going to do for Canadians to try and address the cost of living and the other issues out there. Because, I agree with the Prime Minister on this. Pierre Poilievre poses a very real threat to the unity of our nation, and polarizing Canadians with just in such a joyful manner isn't good for Canada. It's not good for Canadian democracy, but it's also doesn't get us on the path to solving any problems. We can only do that if we start to find ways that we can get together rather than all of the things on which we can disagree, which seems to be Mr. Poilievre's specialty these days.
Lisa, I'll give you the floor to respond to that.
I mean, I'm not gonna argue in the case of an election. All I'm gonna say is axing the tax does have an immediate impact on the affordability of life. And having an election based on that, I don't think is a bad thing, because you're going to have people weighing against creating a lower carbon tax or eliminating the carbon tax on the retail side versus what do you want to do for a cleaner future? What do you want to do for the environment? I don't think that's a bad debate to have within an election, but we are stuck. I will agree with Christy. We are stuck in a situation, and the rest of the world is lapping us on economic growth and competition and the things that are going to keep our kids here in the country, as opposed to having them go off to somewhere else where they're going to work and lose their skills. Kids are not happy in this country whatsoever. And I say kids, I mean under 32. Everyone under 40 is a kid to me. But the young generation is not happy, and they can easily vote by moving themselves to a whole different place and work and not be here to build our country. And that actually is what keeps me up at night. So let's have the election. Let's go forward. I'm not afraid of a Pierre Poilievre prime minister. And I do think that axing the tax does have some kind of valid ballot box question that people are gonna vote on.
Gary, is there any way that you see at this juncture the next election being about something other than change?
Well, I thought, definitely the best ballot question, if you're an opposition leader, is time for a change. But I do think that for the Conservative leader, the leader of the opposition, he's got to think about, certainly axe the tax, the carbon tax. It's a very popular proposal. It's going to get a lot of support. It's getting momentum, actually, his position, rather than the position of the original initiation of the tax. But he's got to watch out he's not just perceived over time to be a one-trick pony as well. Canadians are concerned about a lot of issues. Axing that tax is one of them. But there's a lot of other areas that I think he wants to put in the window if he's running against the incumbent government and other political parties. So I would suggest they broaden their message, and not be, as they say, a one-trick pony going into any potential election, whenever that's going to happen.
Whenever that's going to happen. I got to take a quick break.